Absolutely. You said, we're not as far along as we should be. What do you mean by that? What changes? Let's start from the positive. What kind of changes do you actually see that are moving, let's say, the needle towards, a more multicultural, plurilingual teachers being in the ELT field and actually doing their job? What do you think has come? Like, what are the positives?
Sure. I think there's definitely a lot more awareness about that. I know a lot of other teachers, a lot of other ELT professionals who have moved away from this idea of sounding like a native speaker to proficiency, to being a proficient speaker, to being a communicator. There's a lot more, I think, thanks to social media as well. There's a lot more non-native teachers who are given a platform, who are able to show their expertise. So I definitely think that attitudes are changing, but I don't think institutions have caught up with that. Whether that's examining bodies or people giving qualifications, or kind of bricks and mortar schools, I don't think they've really caught up with that. There is definitely change, which is great. But I think within the kind of larger institutions, there needs to be definitely more awareness and more progress.
Yeah, I agree totally with you. And how do you see that not being actually kind of followed? What is the message? So you're in Edinburgh, so you'll tell us a bit more. I'm hoping towards the end about what your project and how you came to be aware of such, diversity and this dichotomy between native speakers and non-native speakers. But really, what do you see in your own, let's say, surroundings that still kind of cues you to the fact that it's a bit still unequal and we're not quite there yet?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it. To be fair, it's been a long time since I've worked for somebody. So I've not worked within a language school for a long time. Yeah. It might be better now than it was. But I mean, I've seen extremely qualified teachers, like I've worked with teachers who have got doctorates in phonology, an actual teaching degree as opposed to a CELTA, that have got years of experience, speak multiple languages, are significantly more skilled when it comes to this. I've got linguistics background. And I've also seen literally a guy walk off a CELTA, finish a CELTA, and a day later be in a classroom. And that person being paid not only being paid the same as teachers with significant more experience, but quite often being chosen over a teacher with that experience. The same will happen, like you'll get, for example, it's different in the UK to Europe, but certainly in the UK, for summer schools, because there used to be so much demand, that's now kind of changing with COVID, Brexit, and so on. But there was so much demand in summer that they would give the temporary contracts to non-native speakers. You might get them there. But when it came to any work after summer, it was just impossible. You were just not going to get a job. And I mean, to be fair, again, the EFL industry in the UK is pretty rubbish for any kind of permanent contract or decent employment. Anyway, one of the main reasons I work for myself. But you're just not going to get a job. That's the sad reality. So, I've done some work with some guest lecturing for Graz University with English teachers there. And I was saying to them, like, this is the truth is, you who are getting a degree as an English teacher, if you came to the UK, probably would not get a job. And that just makes no sense. Like, I don't understand how you can have someone with a degree level of education and mastery of a language not being chosen over somebody who is 19 years old and has done a 1-month intensive course. Like, I don't understand that. And I think it's really shocking that that's the case, and that it's still happening in a lot of places, right? Yeah. I think it's really horrendous.
Actually, on a previous talk with Joanna, we spoke just about that, how, this is not comparable, like a degree in a specific subject that leads to a teaching career compared to a 4-week course, as you were saying. So I'm glad that you're validating that. But there are still, I see a lot of native speaker colleagues which kind of take a defensive stance when this comes to, when this issue arises. as in, there's a lot of, we're the correct model of pronunciation, and there's a lot of culture that gets into and mixed up with like linguistic language abilities. There is this preconceived belief that just being from a certain nation, you have the culture and it goes along with it. And now you're going to be the mediator of both culture and language. And we had actually a very interesting debate online on LinkedIn on one of the blog posts I published. And it was, people taking the stance of, well, this is cultural for us. And some teachers kind of got into, okay, where are you teaching? Who are you teaching to? From the student's perspective of what they are perceiving and what is their intention and what are their aspirations? Where are they going to live? With which cultures are they going to come in contact with? Notice cultures and not culture, right?
Yeah.
So obviously the communicative aspect kind of favors non-native teachers talking about these issues, right? And saying, okay, you have to validate me as the expert here because I am teaching language. I'm not necessarily teaching culture. And I feel like this culture language kind of, when they go together, it's the native speaker mentality that goes with it normally, because it's like something that cannot be separated. They can be intertwined. I get what some people say, some experts say, but it's not. They don't always go so hand in hand as it seems, because our classes, I always say, are not monolingual classes. They're not in this bubble outside of the world where English is seen as a global language, right? What are your thoughts on that? Why is it that sometimes they cannot shift from to see it from a non-native teacher's perspective, of someone who has dedicated years and years to understand and to better serve a foreigner or someone who wants to learn English as a language, not as a culture?
Mm-hmm. So there's lots and lots of things there, I think, that we want to unpick. Let's start, first of all, with the concept of owning language and who does that language belong to. So if we look at the statistics, I looked up the statistics earlier to make sure that I wouldn't get them wrong, right? So there's 373 million native English speakers in the world, right? And there's 1,080 million non-native or L2 speakers of English. So in this day and age, for somebody to say that you own that culture is ridiculous, because you don't, right? There's